operate in truth, right? Operate in truth. Tell the truth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gator Truth Florida Football Podcast. I'm Daniel, and on this episode, we're going to take a look at the Gators' upcoming trip to Knoxville, Tennessee to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. The game kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern, and really it's interesting. The last two night games that I remember the Gators having in Neyland were 2018 and 2012, both of which really went the Gators' way as far as scoreline and weren't that close. However, I think this one may end up a little bit different as Florida still seems to be in a bit of a rut. And, well, Tennessee, despite a loss to Arkansas, seems to be a little bit better than they have in years past. Doesn't mean that we're not going to see something like last year where Florida comes out and surprises. And, of course, we're going to look at the offense and defense and break that down. There are things such as injuries that I am not fully up on. I am recording this earlier on my usual day of Wednesday as the winds for Hurricane Milton are coming in. Everyone, please stay safe with Hurricane Milton. Hope you're doing well as this releases on Thursday. If you are checking us out, thank you. But again, everyone, stay safe. I do apologize if some wind does come in the recording at different times. It's been going in and out. Wanted to get this done before it came in and I was unable to record due to the outside noise. With that said, before we begin, I do want to give a shout out to our friends at Alvarez Lawn Company. If you have lawn work or anything you need done with your lawn landscaping project or whatever, give my friends at Alvarez Lawn Company a call at 407-490-2617. Once again, if you have anything that you need done with your yard and you're in the Central Florida area, give my friends at Alvarez Lawn Company a call or even text them for a free quote at 407-490-2617. Also, you could shoot them an email at alvarezlawncompany@gmail.com. Alvarez Lawn Company, building plans that work for you. And with that said, let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the Florida offense against the Tennessee defense. This week, I did not make slides. Part of that had to do with just the timing of what we've got going on, unfortunately, with this hurricane. But the Florida offense is 60th in the nation, averaging 411.2 yards per game, while Tennessee's defense is 5th in the nation. Second in the nation. Wrote my thing in the wrong place at 227.6 yards per game. And so really strong defense for the Volunteers. And it's easy to sit back and say, well, who have they played? Yes, in fact, I'm going to get their schedule up for you because they have had a somewhat easy schedule. But I think that sometimes that can be overshadowed while we don't look at, some of ours. They did face Chattanooga FCS, so of course that's going to be easy, a bad Kent State team. But they did face a so-so North Carolina State in North Carolina at Charlotte, so not a home game for NC State, but still that NC State team did beat Northern Illinois, who beat Notre Dame. But we're not going to talk about the transitive property, just that, hey, not exactly the worst team, not the best team. But then they went on the road to Oklahoma, beat Oklahoma and Norman, and then, of course, lost by 5 last week to the Arkansas Razorbacks after a bye week. And I remember saying in the stands that although I'm glad to see Tennessee lose, on the flip side, I don't need a motivated Tennessee at home. And this is their first home game in about a month. This is also their first major home game of the year, as their 3 biggest games so far: NC State, Oklahoma, and Arkansas were away from Rocky Top. So now, Tennessee not only comes in ticked off from a loss, has Alabama coming up next week, and obviously can't be overlooking us now due to that loss, and also is probably more focused on getting prepared for Alabama and trying to get that, squared away this week so they'll be ready for the Crimson Tide next week. So just a little bit of an intangible thing that I wasn't too happy about. I mean, I was happy to see a rival lose, just not happy to have them a little bit extra motivated for a night game in Neyland. But again, hopefully it turns out like our last two trips for a night game in Neyland. But with that said, our passing offense is at 268.6 yards per game. Last week, again, we passed for lower than that, 229 yards against the Knights. And Tennessee's pass defense, and this is a little bit of a misnomer, they're 15th in the nation at 159.6 yards per game. If you listen to our opposing sidelines episode featuring the Vol Fanatic Show, or Michael from the Vol Fanatic Show, he talked about how the secondary for Tennessee has tended to have some problems, and for sure they have. And so Florida really needs to try and take that on. For example, last week, both Green and Singleton, the two quarterbacks who played for Arkansas, averaged over average or above 9.9 yards per attempt, and generally threw the ball all over the place, got it deep. For just to compare, last week, Graham Mertz, 7.8 yards per attempt. And so you got to kind of, if you've got that advantage, if they're having problems, you have to take care of it down the field, which Florida did at times last week against UCF, and other times through some screens that really can't explain us throwing. So it is what it is, but don't let Tennessee's defense get involved and be able to surround a guy by playing the tendencies we've seen with the screen passes and a lot beyond the line. Try and back them out a little bit. Try and take advantage of their weakness of their secondary. Our rushing offense, which should be one of our strengths for the team, Billy Napier, of course, loves the running game, is currently sitting at 142.6 yards per game. That's 83rd in the nation, while Tennessee's allowing 68 yards per game on the ground. Now, last week, Tennessee against Arkansas allowed 134 yards rushing. Some of that could just be matchups. Some of it could be Jaquindon Jackson is one of the best running backs in the SEC, transfer from Utah. And some of it could be, hey, they're facing one of the better offenses, or one of the most changed offenses in the SEC, which is Arkansas. I mean, we saw it this year when they went to Stillwater, played Oklahoma State. They've showed it off a little bit, went toe-to-toe with Texas A&M. And so it's not as simple saying this is a bad Arkansas team. I mean, it's an Arkansas team that's record may not reflect how good that offense may be. But going to the two other, Power 4 games Tennessee's played, in Norman, Oklahoma at home only got 36 yards rushing. Now, some of that is 21 yards in sacks from what I'm seeing. And then going over to Tennessee's game against NC State. So again, Power 4 team, they only allowed, and I believe it was 39 yards rushing. So this is a Tennessee team that has faced some decent teams and held them under 50 yards rushing, had some sacks. Definitely their defensive line is the strength of the defense. Again, Michael came on, he said, D-line's the strength. And so if we try and sit back forever, that's going to be a problem. If we try and run at the strength of that defense, it may be a problem. And he talked about the defense problem is the secondary. Get the ball out quick, get it down the field, as we talked about. That's quick slants. That's, 1, 2, 3 step drop and throw, finding ways to get the ball, not necessarily throwing screens, although sometimes that does help too. And so you want to try and run the ball, but you don't want to run it to your detriment. Definitely against a team, just like last week, that struggles with the passing game more than the running game. Try and do some passing to set up the run instead of the other way around. And so before we get to the defense, and again, I am being a little bit abbreviated just as I can hear the storm coming in and out. Let's give a shout out to my friends at GatorChatter.com. Gator Chatter is a Florida Gators message board owned and operated by a Florida Gator. Check out all the different discussions, lots of fun games going on right now. Last week, I actually won the weekly pick'em. I believe I have the lead for the year, which is totally awesome. All sorts of fun games and discussion going on at GatorChatter.com. Gator Chatter, your Florida Gator sports bar. And we're back. Let's talk about the defense against the Gators, or the Gators defense against the Vols offense. Tennessee currently has the number 5 offense in the country, averaging 519 yards per game, where the Gators are 96 and 96 at 395 yards per game allowed. And we did see a better effort against UCF, as I said in the UCF review. Kind of have to also look at strength of competition there a little bit, and we'll get into that somewhat. And then some of that was also playing well enough to get ahead. You force UCF to go to what they weren't strong at, which is their passing game, and making KJ Jefferson beat you through the air, which of course he did not. Barely over 50% completion percentage. I think it's a little around 55, and only at a 16.8 QBR. So if you can, shut them down and make them beat you, which is what Florida did against UCF, very, very, very good stuff. Same thing against Tennessee. Now, Tennessee does have a strong passing game. However, it's not quite as strong as the running game, and we'll get to that. So the goal, just like last week, stop the run, make the quarterback beat you. Nico for Tennessee, he's a redshirt freshman. You got to try and make him beat you, because he might make freshman mistakes like last week, last play of the game, rolls out right, and instead of throwing to the end zone, hoping Tennessee comes down with the ball for the win, he runs out of bounds. Clock runs out of bounds. And that's definitely a redshirt freshman mistake that you could argue cost Tennessee the game, because maybe they come down with it. But I would say, hey, it's a mistake, shouldn't have been made, but it's what you see true freshmen do. So if you can shut down the run game, and talking about the run game, they are fifth in the nation at 266.8 yards per game on the ground, where our run defense is 101st, allowing 172.6 yards per game. So that will be the matchup. Tennessee's tackles have had a little bit of a problem this year, so that kind of helps us. The thing is, Tennessee's going to run more hurry up than UCF. I talked about after the UCF game looking, and a lot of their snaps tended to be 25, 30 seconds, average around 13, 14 seconds left on the play clock, with some funky things in there like 40 seconds where they didn't really start on the TV. So I just put 40. But anyways, Tennessee's going to try and snap it 10 to 15 to 20, in 10 to 15 to 20 seconds. So 30, 25, 20 seconds left on the play clock. And Florida's got to be ready on the road to stop that, because Mississippi State, when they could run that hurry up, and that's a team that could finish 2-10, they were very successful against us. Tennessee and Heupel, whose offenses have generally been built on speed, that's going to be a problem for us if we cannot get lined up. So a key is get lined up and also play very sound run defense, because again, what you want to do is stop that run so you can force the pass. Now, Tennessee, currently 4th in the nation, and 46th in the nation in passing, and that's at 252 yards per game, where we are 81st in pass defense, allowing 222 yards per game. Now, a lot of Tennessee's passing offense and numbers, those do come from the games like Chattanooga, 314 yards, or, Kent State, where Nico only threw for 173, but they threw for 284 as a team. And so kind of like how I talk about with DJ and our average, right now we've still not hit what our average is too many times. And it's being anchored by DJ's performance against Samford. That's kind of what we're seeing with the Vols passing offense and their games against Kent State and Chattanooga. So there is a chance that, again, if we can stop their run game for the second time in as many weeks, we are facing a top 5 offensive run game. And if we can shut it down or slow it down like we did against UCF, we should be pretty fine. I mean, UCF, RJ Harvey got 75 yards, averaged 4.7 yards per carry. Penny Boone, 8 carries, 42 yards, at 5.3 yards per carry. So it wasn't like UCF wasn't successful on the ground, but part of it was we were successful on defense early and then forced them because we got up 21-3. And the Knights had to, kind of get away from the run game, had to kind of force KJ Jefferson to throw the ball a bit more. That took away from the effectiveness and probably from the use of the run game, because you can't be running when you're down 3 scores or you're going to run the clock out, which we saw kind of when UCF had an 8.5 minute drive to start the third quarter. Granted, to our advantage, because they had that kick to field goal. And it's like, sure, we'll give you a field goal for almost a fourth of the second half or over a fourth of the second half. So again, I would say stop the run. I've said this a bunch of times, stop the run game, force the pass. You've got guys like Jason Marshall. Bridges has really come on at safety. Thornton had a good game against UCF. Even Castell was pretty good against UCF. Devin Moore and Sharif Denson have both been pretty good when they've been in. So it'll just be interesting to see what happens. Florida secondary against the Tennessee passing game. But to get to that matchup, you've got to stop the run. And so we will see how that looks for the Gators. Of course, Tennessee's offense, again, number 5 in the nation. Defense is number 2 in the nation. And so it'll be interesting facing that offense and trying to slow it down, especially if they start running every, 10, 15, 20 seconds of plays. This game, moving to a little bit of intangibles, this game, of course, is being played in Neyland. We talked about it a little bit earlier. This is a night kick in Neyland. This is a team that's coming more focused with something to prove after losing to Arkansas, and also trying to get things right before a big rivalry matchup. Now that we're not a big rivalry matchup against Alabama next week, but also a lot of Tennessee fans will probably tell you Florida is the school they hate the most. And so they're going to be loud. Is Rocky Top as loud as the Swamp? No. I've been there on 3 occasions. Granted, one was 2020, but that's not to say they are not loud. So it's going to be a loud, raucous nighttime environment. I'm excited to actually experience it for the first time at night. But but it's also going to be something that if Tennessee starts going, those fans will get behind them. I was there in 2016. I was there in 2022. If things start going good for Tennessee, those fans will snowball and help make things happen, kind of like the Swamp does with the Gators defense. And I'm curious to how much the Gators D was energized by the Swamp last week and how it looks against a much, much better team this week. With that said, Tennessee is missing two of their top receiver. Well, again, I haven't seen the injury reports, but there were injuries to Brew McCoy and Squirrel. Yes, Squirrel is the guy's name, White. Two of Tennessee's top receivers who may or may not play this week. So, again, things that benefit. Florida can stop the run. Tennessee's got the number one guy for rushing TDs in the SEC, which is Sampson. He's also number 2 in yards in the SEC. And Bishop is, I believe, number 12, which makes in yards in the SEC, which is still higher than Montrell Johnson, who leads the Gators in rushing yards. So definitely a dangerous rushing game that we've got to slow down. So with that said, what would I predict happens on Saturday night? Well, we've seen a lot better run game with the issues at tackle that Tennessee has had. And generally what we've seen come up the last few weeks with a guy like Pyburn, who's had a high motor, and once he was really given a shot, seems to have been making a little bit of a difference. Pop Howard playing a lot more. Lots of things that you just see that can impact that running game. Also, Shamar James, a little bit less rotation would probably be good, but I'm going to say UF takes just enough advantage of the issues on that Tennessee offensive line to slow down the run a little bit. If Florida gets back guys like Mazzell and Trey Wilson, who I understand Wilson, I believe, was dressed out and just didn't play against UCF, get those guys back, get them the ball in space, and you've got an entirely new dynamic to this offense. I think there's a chance that some Tennessee players may also be looking ahead, although I think after last week, unfortunately, that is not going to be as many as I'd like. But I think Florida on the road can get the job done. As you know, I don't pick against Florida anyways, but I will say this one will probably be in the range of Florida 27, Tennessee 21. Last week, the Vols were held to 14 points by Arkansas. Granted, that was on the road. However, it still happened. And Florida has at least as much talent as Arkansas. Now it's just a matter of stopping the run enough to make Nico have to try and beat you. And if that happens and Nico beats us, fine. But I think guys like Jason Marshall can help patrol and keep the success through there to the minimum. So I'm going to go with Florida at 27 and Tennessee at 21. I do think Florida, obviously covers. I feel a lot better about this game than I did a week ago. Part of that is Florida looking better on defense against UCF, acknowledging, the difference between a UCF and a Tennessee, but still saying, hey, there are things we did better. And then seeing Tennessee go down and have a little bit of a struggle. So that also, kind of like we talked about going into the UCF game. At one point, UCF fouled up here. Florida fans were kind of up here, and it met in the middle. And, of course, we saw what happened then. That's how I feel about this Tennessee game. Of course, Tennessee, Michael was on talking about how it's always close. There's always something funky that happens with this game, and there definitely is something funky that's going to happen with this game. I do think Florida comes out with a victory. Again, Everyone stay safe during the hurricane. Sorry for a little bit of a rush put together show, but hey, is what it is. We'll get through it. And with that said, thank you all for listening. And as always, go Gators.